Have you ever felt as if there was a quiet, hidden place inside you, waiting for something extraordinary to take form, a place untouched by noise, chaos, or the demands of the outside world? Imagine, for a moment, that deep within your soul lies a humble inner manger, a sacred space where the most powerful ideas and transformations are not built through struggle or force, but born in stillness and openness. This is not just poetic language. It is a timeless spiritual truth. The manger is more than a scene from an ancient story. It is a living symbol of what can happen in your life when your heart and mind make room for something divine to awaken. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. What if the real birth of Christ was never meant to be confined to a single point in history, but instead is an ongoing event that takes place within you, not in a stable in Bethlehem, but in the quiet sanctuary of your own consciousness? The Nativity is not merely a tale of shepherds and starlit nights. It's an eternal lesson, whispering that when there is space in your thoughts, free from clutter and distraction, something extraordinary can be born. Has this ever happened to you? A moment where a sudden clarity, an unexplainable peace, seemed to arrive from nowhere, yet felt deeply familiar? That is the power of your inner manger. And here's the beautiful paradox. The most profound awakenings don't arrive in the middle of applause or recognition. They come when the world isn't looking, when your attention is turned inward. What you're about to discover might surprise you, that the divine doesn't need fanfare to make its entrance. It only needs an invitation. This is why the story of Christ's birth resonates beyond religion, beyond time. It is about the miraculous potential that lives within you, waiting patiently for you to notice. Stay with me until the end, because understanding this can change the way you approach not just your spiritual life, but every decision, every dream, every challenge you face. You see, this manger within is more than a metaphor. It's a place of creation. The divine seed of inspiration is planted there, and if nurtured with faith, imagination, and openness, it will grow into something that transforms your life from the inside out. Think about it. In a world obsessed with effort, noise, and constant movement, could it be that the most powerful way to bring forth something sacred is to step back, quiet the mind, and create space? Could it be that you already have everything you need for the birth of a new reality? Not out there, but right here, in the silent core of your being. The lesson of the Nativity reminds us that greatness often arrives in the most unassuming of forms. It does not demand the grand stages of life. It seeks the simplicity of an open heart. And when we recognize this, we begin to see that every moment holds the possibility of a new birth, a renewal of vision, purpose, and love. Now, I want to go even deeper into this mystery, into how the presence of this inner manger can guide you to a state of awareness where the Christ consciousness is not just a concept, but a living, breathing reality within you. If these insights spoke to you, subscribing will make sure you're here for the next time we dive even deeper. If that quiet inner manger is the birthplace, then imagination is the bridge that carries what is born there into the visible world. It's not the kind of imagination used to escape reality, but the kind that shapes it, the conscious act of aligning your thoughts with a higher principle, the way a compass aligns with true north. When you picture something in complete harmony with spiritual truth, you are not just daydreaming, you are building the blueprint for it to take form. And here's the hidden truth most people overlook. Your life will always expand toward the dominant pictures you hold in your mind, whether you place them there intentionally or not. The mind is a creative organ, not in a poetic sense, but in a literal, transformative way. Everything you have experienced began as an invisible seed, a thought, an image. Change the image, and the result will follow, though often in ways that feel mysterious or unexpected. This is why imagination is not a luxury. It is the engine that drives your personal transformation. But it only works to its fullest when it's aligned with the deeper principles that govern life, those timeless patterns that have been whispered through spiritual teachings for centuries. Think of it like this. When the mind is scattered, full of contradictions and fears, it's like trying to send a message through static. the signal is lost, distorted. But when you hold a single, clear vision infused with faith, you remove the interference, and the reality you are shaping begins to come into focus. The impact can be profound, not just on your circumstances, but on your mindset, your relationships, even the way you see yourself in the mirror each morning. This teaching was never meant to be an abstract philosophy to ponder only on quiet evenings. Its purpose was always practical, a method to be lived, tested, and proven in the small and large moments of daily life. The moments when you choose your response instead of reacting automatically. The moments when you consciously replace worry with the image of a solution already unfolding. And perhaps most importantly, the moments when you remember that your thoughts are not passive reflections of the world. They are active forces shaping it. Behind the scenes of every great shift in life, there is always this unseen process at work. First, the seed is planted in thought, then it is nurtured through imagination, and finally it breaks into the world of form. Sometimes it's subtle, like a quiet, inner confidence that begins to change the way you move through the day. Other times, it's a visible breakthrough that seems to arrive out of nowhere, but was actually building all along in the silence of your own consciousness. When you understand this, you stop waiting for life to hand you the perfect conditions before you make a move. You start realizing that you can create the conditions from within, and that's where the true freedom lies. Not in controlling every external detail, but in mastering the inner landscape from which everything flows. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this bridge of imagination works when it is fully aligned with spiritual law, and how this alignment can turn even the smallest, most fragile idea into a force that reshapes your reality from the ground up. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." When you imagine the good as if it were already real, something shifts deep within you. It's as though the very air in that inner manger begins to glow, and a quiet certainty takes the place of doubt. This is not wishful thinking or empty hope. It's the deliberate act of holding the vision so vividly that your mind and heart begin to treat it as present fact. And in doing so, you create the perfect conditions for the birth of Christ consciousness within. That birth isn't dramatic in the way the world might expect. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. Instead, it rises softly, like the first light of morning, changing everything it touches, without needing to make a sound. Join me here by subscribing so we can keep exploring these ideas together. This awakening is not about becoming someone different, but about remembering who you already are, a being whose origin is divine, whose source is infinite. The spiritual birth is the moment you recognize that the kingdom of God is not a faraway promise, but something alive and unfolding in the very fabric of your daily life. Every conversation, every decision, every quiet thought becomes a space where that divine presence can move. And when you start to see it, you realize it was there all along, hidden behind the noise of ordinary thinking, waiting for you to turn toward it. The impact of this realization is profound. Your mindset changes, not because someone told you to think positive, but because you now understand that your thoughts are creative forces. You stop trying to force outcomes from the outside and begin cultivating the inner state that naturally gives rise to them. This is where transformation becomes inevitable. When the Christ consciousness takes root, it reframes your perception. A challenge stops being a dead end and becomes an opportunity for a deeper expression of truth. A moment of tension becomes a doorway for peace to step through. Behind the scenes of your life, a new order begins to take shape. You might notice it in the way your responses shift, how patience replaces frustration, or how compassion softens judgment. These are not random personality changes. They are the fruits of a new awareness, the evidence that the divine origin you've awakened to is quietly restructuring your reality. The more you nurture it, the more it manifests outwardly. In your relationships, your work, your health, and even in the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. And here's the hidden truth. The Christ consciousness is not a rare gift reserved for saints or mystics. It is a universal potential, accessible to anyone willing to create space for it and sustain it through inner vision. The real challenge is not in getting it, but in letting go of the clutter, the fears, the doubts, the narratives that keep you small, so that what is already yours can emerge. Once you allow that presence to be born within, you begin to live from it, and the world around you starts to respond in ways that defy logic, but feel undeniably right. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this state of awareness moves from an inner awakening to an active force that reshapes the way you experience every moment of your journey. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." It's almost paradoxical that the greatest spiritual truths often choose the humblest places to reveal themselves. In the biblical image of the manger, we see not only a historical moment, but a living metaphor, a reminder that the highest expressions of divine wisdom rarely arrive in grand temples or elaborate stages. They emerge in the modest corners of the human imagination, in moments when the mind is unguarded and open enough to receive them. This is where the hidden truth lies. Greatness does not demand extravagance. It asks only for space, sincerity, and a willingness to believe in what cannot yet be seen. The manger is more than a backdrop to a sacred story. It's a mirror to your own inner life. Your mind, no matter how cluttered with daily noise, holds within it a quiet place where something extraordinary can begin. And when you dare to protect that space, when you refuse to let cynicism or fear intrude, you are preparing it for a birth that will transform not only your inner world, but the way you navigate every decision, every challenge, every crossroad of your journey. This spiritual conception begins when faith joins hands with imagination. It's not enough to simply picture a better version of yourself or a brighter future. Those images need the lifeblood of belief. Faith gives substance to the vision, making it feel as real now as it will when it unfolds in time. And here's the fascinating part. Once faith and imagination work together, the inner reality becomes so vivid that the outer world begins to adjust to match it. It's as if life conspires behind the scenes, rearranging circumstances to align with the truth you've already accepted within. In this way, conceiving Christ within oneself is not an abstract idea. It's an active process, a conscious choice, to hold the highest spiritual truths steadily in mind until they take root. And it requires persistence, because distractions will always try to pull your focus elsewhere. But every time you return to that vision with unwavering trust, you strengthen its foundation. Eventually, it becomes less of a hope and more of a knowing. The impact of this is far-reaching. Your mindset begins to shift in ways that may surprise you. Old habits lose their grip, not because you forced them away, but because they no longer fit the person you're becoming. Doubts that once seemed so convincing start to dissolve, replaced by a deeper confidence in the unseen. Even the challenges that once intimidated you begin to look different, as though they are no longer obstacles but opportunities for the truth you're carrying to express itself more fully. If you've been enjoying this journey, subscribe and let's keep the conversation going. This is the essence of spiritual birth, a process that begins quietly, often unnoticed by those around you, yet sets in motion a transformation so profound it can alter the course of your life. And just like the manger, it often happens away from the spotlight, in the privacy of your own thoughts, where the seeds of the divine are nurtured until they are ready to emerge. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this sacred process, once set in motion, begins to manifest outwardly in ways that leave no doubt that something far greater is guiding your path. Write in the comments, "I believe in this." There is a reason why the teaching of praying in secret holds such timeless power. It's not simply about physical solitude, but about creating a sanctuary within, where the noise of the world no longer dictates the rhythm of your thoughts. In that space, the constant pull of external distractions fades, and the mind becomes a fertile ground for divine ideas to take root. This is not isolation, it's preparation, a conscious turning inward that allows you to tune in to a higher frequency, where guidance flows without interference. Inner stillness is more than a peaceful feeling. It is a deliberate choice, a form of spiritual discipline that demands consistency and intention. It's the act of mastering the mind, refusing to let it be dragged from one worry to another, one opinion to the next. It's saying no to the endless chorus of external voices, so you can finally hear the quiet certainty of your own divine connection. This stillness is not passive, it's deeply engaged, like the stillness of a mountain, holding its ground while the wind howls around it. In this sacred silence, something extraordinary happens. Fear begins to lose its grip, because it thrives on noise, on constant reaction. When you step into stillness, fear has nowhere to anchor itself. The constant urge to seek validation from others starts to fade, replaced by the steady assurance that your worth does not require an audience. You begin to see that most of the turbulence you thought was outside of you was actually within, and by quieting it, you change not only your perception, but the reality you experience. This kind of inner discipline transforms more than just your spiritual life. It impacts the decisions you make, the way you approach challenges, even the subtle energy you carry into a room. You stop being pushed and pulled by circumstances, and instead, you move with a quiet authority that others can sense, even if they can't explain it. Behind the scenes, this shift alters the trajectory of your journey in ways that feel both natural and miraculous. And here's the hidden truth many overlook. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is the foundation for the right action. By stepping back from the clamor, you create space for clarity to rise. You begin to see the path that was always there but obscured by the fog of constant motion. This is where revelations come, not as random flashes, but as natural consequences of aligning your inner state with the principles that govern creation itself. It is in this disciplined quiet that the sacred inner manger becomes fully prepared for what is to come. The soil of your mind is free from weeds, the air is clear, and the atmosphere is ready for something divine to be conceived and nurtured. And as you sustain this state, you notice how easily inspiration flows, how naturally solutions appear, and how the weight you once carried seems lighter without anything in the outer world having changed. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this cultivated stillness becomes the very channel through which the unseen begins to shape the seen, turning the silent work of the soul into tangible transformation. Write in the comments, "I choose stillness." Protecting the inner image is like guarding a delicate flame from a sudden gust of wind. Once a spiritual idea has been conceived in your mind, it exists in a vulnerable state, and the smallest intrusion of doubt, criticism, or fear can dim its light before it has the chance to grow. This is why preparing the manger is not only about creating space for divine ideas, but also about sheltering them from the conditions that could weaken them. It's about choosing carefully who and what has access to that sacred vision in its early stages, because not every voice is meant to speak into your dream. Subscribe now and stay connected. There's so much more we can unfold together. The hidden truth is that this stage often feels like nothing is happening. You've planted the seed, and your imagination has wrapped it in faith, but on the surface, there is no visible change. This is the season of gestation, and just like in nature, it requires patience, maturity, and an unshakable trust in the unseen process, unfolding behind the scenes. Spiritual ideas grow in silence, in the absence of forced urgency, and in the quiet confidence that what has begun will find its way into form at the right moment. It's here that mindset becomes everything. The temptation to rush, to constantly check for signs, or to let the opinions of others shape your expectations can be strong. But this is where discipline comes in, holding the image steady, unaltered, as if it were already real, even when the evidence hasn't yet appeared. The impact of sustaining this inner focus is profound, because it not only shapes the outcome but transforms you in the process. You become more resilient, more certain, and more aligned with the truth you are nurturing. Think of it as carrying a sacred vision through the corridors of your daily life, unseen by those around you, yet influencing every step you take. The decisions you make, the opportunities you notice, even the way you respond to challenges begin to shift in subtle ways, all guided by the presence of that inner image. You start to see connections and possibilities you would have missed before, and the path ahead seems to quietly rearrange itself to meet you where you are headed. There is a quiet power in allowing something to grow without demanding constant proof of its progress. It is the same power that turns a seed into a tree, or transforms a single idea into a reality that reshapes your life. And often, by the time the change becomes visible to others, the transformation within you has already been complete for some time. This is the unseen journey, the behind-the-scenes work that most never witness, but it is where the real magic happens. The outer manifestation is simply the final chapter of a story that has been unfolding, in silence all along. And when it finally appears, it feels less like a surprise, and more like the inevitable next step in a process you've trusted from the start. Now, I want to go even deeper into how to sustain this sacred vision through the inevitable tests and distractions that arise, and how those very challenges can serve to strengthen rather than weaken the path you're on. Write in the comments, "I'm protecting my vision." Clarity in thought is like a precise blueprint handed to the universe. The clearer and more vivid the image you hold, the more direct and harmonious the path to its manifestation becomes. Fleeting ideas, scattered attention, or conflicting intentions only create a distorted pattern, producing results that feel incomplete or inconsistent. But when your inner picture is steady, intense, and emotionally alive, it acts like a magnetic force, drawing circumstances, people, and opportunities into alignment with it. This is why mental clarity is not just helpful, it's essential. Without it, the energy you send out is diluted, and the form that returns to you will reflect that lack of focus. Living the image within yourself as if it were already real is not pretending. It is entering into the feeling of the fulfilled vision so completely that your mindset shifts to accommodate it. Your decisions, your words, even the smallest daily actions begin to match the reality you are creating. This is where transformation becomes inevitable, because you're no longer waiting for change, you're embodying it before it appears. And when the inner and outer states finally meet, the transition feels natural, almost seamless, as though life had always been leading you to that exact point. Yet, with this creative power comes the responsibility to guard your imagination. The images you allow to take root will shape your destiny just as surely as seeds determine the kind of tree that grows. If you dwell on fear, lack, or doubt, those images will gather strength and eventually take form, just as visions of faith and abundance do. This is the hidden truth most people miss. The universe doesn't judge your vision, it simply responds to it, which means the role of the mind is not only to create, but to choose carefully what it continues to nourish. Guarding your imagination is a conscious discipline. It means noticing when your mental movie has shifted toward the wrong script and redirecting it before it gains momentum. It means surrounding yourself with influences, conversations, environments, even the stories you consume, that reinforce the image you want to live out. And it means being vigilant, because the most persistent challenge to your vision will come not from others, but from the old patterns within you that try to pull you back to what is familiar. If this resonated with you, subscribing is the easiest way to be here when we continue. When you understand the impact of this inner work, you start to see how much of what you once called fate or luck was really the result of images you had been carrying all along. The behind-the-scenes reality is that your future is being shaped right now in the privacy of your own thoughts. And the more deliberately you guide those thoughts, the more aligned and purposeful your journey becomes. Now, I want to go even deeper into how to fortify that inner vision so it becomes unshakable, no matter what challenges or distractions arise, and how the very act of holding it can set in motion events that seem almost impossible by ordinary logic. Write in the comments, "My vision is clear." There's a quiet but undeniable power in a mind that refuses to release its vision. I once heard about a woman who, every single night for an entire month, closed her eyes and saw her family gathered in perfect harmony. She didn't just picture their faces, she imagined the tone of their voices, the warmth of their smiles, even the subtle ease in the way they interacted. She held that image so vividly that it became almost more real to her than the conflicts that had existed for years. And then, without any grand announcement or orchestrated plan, life began to shift. A phone call led to an unexpected reunion. Old misunderstandings melted away in conversation. Within weeks, the reality she stepped into looked almost exactly like the one she had been living in her mind all along. This isn't magic in the sense of bending the rules of the world. It's alignment, the meeting point between a steady, clear inner image and the outer conditions that rise to meet it. When you understand this, you begin to realize that visualization isn't a technique you use once in a while. It's a daily responsibility. Every day you are feeding your imagination something, whether consciously or not. The question is whether those inner images are building the life you want or reinforcing the life you're trying to change. The hidden truth here is that each of us is carrying the possibility of our own personal nativity. The birth of Christ consciousness is not an event locked in the past, but an ongoing potential within every mind willing to conceive it. To make that birth a reality, you must protect and nurture the images that align with it, just as a gardener tends to the plants that will one day bear fruit. And like any living thing, these images need consistent care, moments of quiet attention, the light of belief, and the patience to let them mature. When you take ownership of this inner work, something remarkable happens. The external world, which once felt fixed and unyielding, begins to respond in ways you couldn't have scripted. People show up at the right time. Opportunities open without effort. Situations that once felt impossible suddenly feel within reach. And all of it stems from the fact that you've been shaping reality behind the scenes, long before anyone else could see it. This is why the discipline of guarding your inner images is so critical. Every stray thought, every story you replay, every mental picture you dwell on leaves an imprint. If those imprints are infused with fear or limitation, they will inevitably color what you experience. But if they are saturated with faith, clarity, and emotional truth, they will pull your life toward a higher expression almost irresistibly. It's in this understanding that the journey becomes deeply personal. No one else can hold your vision for you. No one else can decide what images will live in the sacred space of your mind. That responsibility and that privilege is yours alone. And when you embrace it, you discover that the birth of something divine within you is not just possible, it is inevitable. Now I want to go even deeper into how this personal nativity unfolds in the midst of everyday life, and how the smallest, most ordinary moments can carry the seeds of extraordinary transformation. Write in the comments, "I carry the vision within me." Affirmative prayer is not about pleading for something to arrive. It's about standing in the certainty that it already exists in the unseen and aligning yourself with that reality. When you approach prayer this way, you are, in essence, offering your mind as a prepared manger, a sacred space where the truth of health, peace, and abundance is welcomed as present and active now, not as distant possibilities. It's a quiet yet powerful declaration that says, "This is already mine," and by holding that state, you invite life to organize itself around it. This form of prayer is less about words and more about the consciousness behind them. You're not reciting phrases in the hope that repetition will sway some external force. You're using each affirmation as a brushstroke, painting a vivid inner image until it feels more real than the circumstances currently in front of you. And as you live from that inner reality, your outer world begins to adjust in ways that often feel subtle at first, yet undeniable over time. Make sure you're part of the next chapter. Hit subscribe and walk this path with me. The hidden truth is that the mind operates under a creative principle that is both constant and impartial. It takes whatever thoughts and emotions you consistently hold and impresses them into the fabric of your experience. This is why transformation doesn't begin out there. It starts in the private, often unobserved corners of your own thinking. Your mindset is the blueprint, and your emotional state is the energy that builds it into form. The universe is not choosing for you, it is responding to you. Understanding this shifts everything. It removes the illusion that life is happening at random and reveals the role you play as a conscious participant in your own journey. Every moment becomes an opportunity to choose deliberately what you will allow to dominate your inner landscape. Will you give more attention to the images of possibility, or will you feed the visions of limitation? The decision is yours, and the impact is unavoidable. Behind the scenes of what we call manifestation, there is no mystery in the mechanical sense. The process is simple. Thought creates form, and sustained thought, infused with feeling, creates sustained form. But while the principle is straightforward, living it requires awareness, discipline, and a willingness to detach from appearances long enough for the new reality to take shape. This is why affirmative prayer is so potent. It bypasses the urge to wait for evidence and instead anchors you in the state where the evidence will inevitably appear. When you begin to operate from this place, you notice a subtle but profound change in how you engage with life. Challenges lose some of their weight because you see them not as verdicts, but as temporary scenes in a larger unfolding. Opportunities become easier to recognize because your inner vision is already aligned with them. And perhaps most importantly, you stop feeling powerless because you've realized that the power to shape your path was within you all along. Now I want to go even deeper into how mastering this creative principle can turn even the most ordinary day into a living demonstration of your highest truth. Write in the comments, "I choose my thoughts wisely." Effective prayer follows a rhythm that is both simple and profound. You conceive the idea in your mind. You believe it as an unshakable fact, and you expect its manifestation without leaning into anxiety or impatience. This is not about forcing outcomes through willpower, but about stepping so completely into the certainty of your vision that it feels inevitable. The expectation is not desperate or restless. It's the calm assurance that comes from knowing the seed has been planted in fertile soil and will grow in its appointed time. This is where many stumble. They hold the vision but then erode it by constantly checking for signs, questioning the process, or letting fear's whisper override the quiet confidence they began with. True expectation is steady. It allows space for the unseen forces to arrange circumstances without your interference. It's the same kind of trust you have when you plant a seed in the ground. You don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You nurture it, protect it, and allow time to do its work. And while belief forms the structure, imagination breathes life into it. Reason alone cannot create, because reason is bound by what it already knows, by past evidence, familiar limits, and visible facts. But imagination has no such boundaries. When you allow yourself to see, hear, and feel your desired outcome as if it were unfolding right now, you bypass the limits of logic and speak directly to the subconscious mind. The subconscious doesn't argue or analyze. It accepts the vivid emotional picture you give it and begins to work tirelessly to bring it into form. The hidden truth is that this process is happening all the time, whether you're aware of it or not. Every image you dwell on, every scenario you rehearse in your mind, is planting seeds. The only question is whether those seeds are aligned with the life you want or with the fears you're trying to escape. The impact of realizing this is enormous, because it means you have the power to shift your trajectory at any moment, simply by choosing what you allow to live in your imagination. When your mental pictures are charged with genuine emotion, they imprint deeply. You begin to act, speak, and make decisions from the perspective of someone who already inhabits that reality. This shift in your state of being naturally attracts matching conditions, as if the outer world is compelled to mirror the inner one. And as the two align, the change can appear sudden to others, though you'll know it's the result of an inner journey you've been living for some time. This is why the marriage of belief and imagination is so vital. One provides the foundation, the other the energy. Without belief, imagination drifts like a cloud. Without imagination, belief remains static. Together, they become a creative force capable of reshaping every aspect of your life. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this fusion of belief and imagination can move you beyond limitations you once thought were permanent and open doors you didn't even know existed. Write in the comments, "I imagine it as real." Belief is the silent architect of reality. Before a single piece of evidence appears, belief is already at work, mobilizing the resources, both within you and around you, to shape the outcome. It operates according to a spiritual law that is as precise as gravity. What you accept as true in the deepest part of your being begins to gather the people, circumstances, and opportunities that will match it, and this happens whether or not you are consciously aware of it. That's the hidden truth. Belief is always creating, but only deliberate belief creates with direction and purpose. When your belief is unwavering, It becomes a kind of magnetic center, pulling into your orbit the elements needed to bring your vision into form. You might think you're making random decisions or bumping into chance encounters, but behind the scenes, a chain of cause and effect is quietly unfolding, all originating from the state of mind you've been holding. This is why waiting for evidence before believing is a trap. It inverts the process. Evidence is not the foundation. It's the result. Every visible thing around you, from the chair you're sitting on to the technology you're using right now, began as an idea. Someone held a mental image of it, long before it could be touched or seen. Matter itself is condensed thought, shaped and given direction by the ideas that precede it. In this light, the physical world is not the starting point but the outcome, a reflection of the unseen patterns formed in the mind. Understanding this changes the way you engage with challenges. Instead of reacting only to what is visible, you begin to address the invisible root, the thought patterns, the assumptions, the quiet convictions that set the stage for what you're experiencing. If those roots are strong, aligned, and clear, the outer results cannot help but follow. And if they're producing something you don't want, you have the power to replant. This isn't about ignoring reality. It's about realizing that reality is fluid, and that the most effective way to change it is from the inside out. The impact of living from this understanding is profound. You stop being at the mercy of circumstances and start moving through life with a kind of inner authority, knowing that your thoughts are not powerless wishes, but the very blueprint of your future. The journey from belief to evidence is not always instant, but it is inevitable when the belief is strong enough. And often, by the time the results arrive, you're already living as though they were here, because the shift within you has been so complete. That's when life feels less like a series of random events and more like the unfolding of a design you've been consciously shaping all along. Now, I want to go even deeper into how to align this creative process with the highest spiritual principles so that what you bring into form not only fulfills your desires, but also elevates every part of your journey. Write in the comments, "I believe before I see." There was a woman who, for years, carried an inner image of scarcity like a shadow that followed her everywhere. No matter how much she worked or how carefully she budgeted, that underlying belief kept recreating the same struggle. Then one day, she decided to experiment with something different. She began deliberately replacing the picture in her mind, not with vague hope, but with a clear, detailed vision of stability. She imagined herself opening bills with ease, seeing a healthy balance in her accounts, and feeling the calm confidence of someone who always had more than enough. She lived in that mental space daily, letting it color her thoughts, her posture, even the way she spoke about money. Within weeks, opportunities started appearing that she hadn't anticipated. A job opening with better pay and conditions practically landed in her lap. Conversations with people in her network led to unexpected offers. Her circumstances shifted, yes, but more importantly, her perception shifted. She no longer approached life from the narrow lens of not enough, and that change in her inner reality made the outer one almost inevitable. This is the hidden truth about transformation. If you want the effect to change, you have to change the cause. Trying to fix the symptoms without addressing the root thought image is like trimming the leaves of a weed and expecting it not to grow back. The outer condition is only the visible shadow of an inner state. Until that state is altered, the same patterns will keep reappearing, no matter how much effort you throw at them. When you focus solely on the external, whether it's money, relationships, health, or any other area, you're working at the surface level, constantly reacting to what has already been set in motion. But when you turn inward and change the thought image at the core, you change the blueprint itself. The external world, which is only a reflection, has no choice but to adjust. The impact of working at this deeper level is profound because it frees you from the endless cycle of chasing quick fixes. You stop trying to manipulate circumstances and start shaping the inner reality that produces them. It's not always instantaneous, but it is lasting, because the change begins where it truly matters. Behind the scenes of every genuine breakthrough, this is the process at work. The person may appear to have gotten lucky or been in the right place at the right time, but in truth, They were already living internally in alignment with the new reality before it showed up. The opportunities they seized were simply the natural extensions of that alignment. And once you grasp this, you start to see that every struggle is really an invitation to examine the image you're holding. Not to criticize yourself for it, but to recognize that you have the power to replace it with something that will lead you where you want to go. That's the real leverage, the ability to choose the cause rather than chase the symptom. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this inner shift becomes self-sustaining, so that the new reality doesn't just appear for a moment, but becomes the permanent foundation of your journey. Write in the comments, I change the cause. Every thought you hold with emotional weight is more than a passing notion. It is an order sent out into the unseen framework of reality. The universe doesn't deal in idle daydreams or half-hearted wishes. It responds to the images you energize with sustained focus and feeling. Each time you revisit a thought with conviction, you reinforce that command, like pressing the same key over and over, until the note resonates so strongly it cannot be ignored. This is why casual negativity can be so destructive, and why disciplined, intentional thinking has such a transformative impact. You are not just reflecting on life, you are directing it. This is not abstract philosophy. It is the hidden mechanism behind every shift in circumstance, every breakthrough, and every disappointment. The unseen substance that shapes your life has no will of its own. It moves according to the patterns impressed upon it, whether those patterns are built on faith or fear. The more sustained and emotionally charged the thought, the more precise and swift the manifestation. At the core of this process lies what could be called the trinity of mental creation: thought, feeling, and form. Thought is the blueprint, the deliberate design you choose to hold in mind. Feeling is the vitality, the energy that animates that design and gives it depth. Form is the inevitable result, the outer expression of the inner union between image and emotion. Even the highest spiritual truths, even the example of Christ consciousness itself, move through this exact law. Nothing bypasses it, because it is woven into the very structure of creation. When you truly grasp this, you stop treating your thoughts as harmless background noise. You begin to see them as living seeds, each one carrying the potential to grow into something real. This awareness sharpens your choices. You become more selective about the mental pictures you revisit, and more intentional about the emotional climate you cultivate around them. It's no longer about wishing for change. It's about embodying the change long before it takes visible shape. The impact of living this way is subtle at first but becomes undeniable. Your mindset shifts into a kind of quiet authority because you're no longer reacting blindly to the outer world. You know that the outer is always the effect, never the cause. And from that place, you approach your journey differently. Decisions are made with clarity, setbacks are met with composure, and opportunities are recognized instantly because they match the images you've been sustaining all along. This is creation from the inside out, and it is as consistent as the sunrise. You don't have to wonder if it's working. You only have to stay faithful to the process. The form will come because it has no choice but to follow the union of thought and feeling. Now, I want to go even deeper into how mastering this trinity allows you to not only create intentionally, but to refine and elevate every aspect of your reality, so that what you bring into being aligns fully with your highest vision. Write in the comments, I create with thought and feeling. True prayer is not a ritual of words, but an act of vision. It is the art of seeing with the soul's eyes, stepping beyond the limits of logic and allowing yourself to live in full detail inside the reality you desire. In that moment you are not asking, wishing, or hoping. You are inhabiting. You see the scene as though it were unfolding now, not in some vague future. You hear the sounds, feel the textures, sense the emotions, until the line between imagination and experience begins to dissolve. This is where prayer becomes creation, when your inner reality is so vivid and complete that it naturally calls forth its reflection in the outer world. To make this process tangible, you build what could be called the answer picture. It's not complicated, but it is deliberate. The answer picture is a mental scene that encapsulates the outcome you desire in its simplest, clearest form, yet carries enough sensory and emotional richness to feel alive. It might be one decisive moment, a handshake sealing a deal, a joyful embrace signaling reconciliation, a letter confirming the opportunity you've been preparing for. What matters is not the number of details, but the depth of the feeling. The subconscious mind responds to emotion far more than it does to complexity. When you hold this answer picture consistently, you give your subconscious a direct instruction it cannot misinterpret. It begins to organize your perceptions, heighten your awareness of certain opportunities, and subtly shift your actions in ways that align with the image you've chosen. This is the hidden truth behind what some call coincidence. You're not stumbling into chance events. You're recognizing and moving toward what your mind has already been programmed to seek. The power of this practice lies in repetition. A single moment of vivid imagining can plant a seed, but it's the sustained nurturing of that image, returning to it again and again with the same emotional charge, that roots it deeply enough to influence reality. And because the subconscious cannot distinguish between an experience lived outwardly and one fully felt inwardly, the answer picture becomes a lived memory long before it materializes. Over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel gratitude and certainty for something that hasn't yet appeared in physical form, and that state of being changes you. It changes your mindset, your energy, and the way you interact with life. The impact is not limited to the specific goal you're visualizing. It spills over into other areas, subtly raising the standard for what you expect and accept for yourself. This is the behind-the-scenes work that most people overlook because they are fixated on what they can measure or see. But when you build your answer picture with clarity and conviction, you realize that the outer world is only catching up to a reality that already exists within you. Now, I want to go even deeper into how to infuse this answer picture with a level of emotional intensity that makes it nearly irresistible to the forces that shape your life. Write in the comments, "I see it as done." The most potent answer pictures are always rooted in self-transformation, rather than an attempt to control the choices or behavior of others. When your vision is anchored in who you are becoming, in the qualities, clarity, and strength that emerge within you, it taps into an unshakable source of power. Trying to bend others to your will is a fragile pursuit. Even if you succeed momentarily, the results are unstable because they rest on something outside your own authority. But when the transformation happens within, the external naturally reorganizes to reflect it. The impact is deeper, more authentic, and lasting because it is born from your own evolution. Centering your answer picture on personal change also sharpens your sense of alignment. You stop asking, "How do I make this happen?" and begin asking, "Who do I need to be for this to happen naturally?" That subtle shift transforms your mindset and your decisions. You begin to carry yourself differently, make choices that match your highest vision, and release patterns that once kept you anchored in the old reality. The journey becomes less about forcing outcomes and more about stepping into the identity that naturally attracts them. One powerful way to deepen the emotional resonance of your answer picture is to weave biblical verses or other sacred phrases into it, not as mere words, but as living triggers for your imagination. A single line of scripture can open a floodgate of imagery, evoking scenes, feelings, and revelations that align you instantly with truth and virtue. When a verse becomes more than text, when it becomes a mental doorway, it can anchor you back into your vision with precision, even in moments of distraction or doubt. For example, a phrase like, "Be still and know that I am God," can transform into a vivid mental landscape. You see yourself in complete peace, grounded in trust, feeling the quiet certainty of divine order. Or, "Ask and it shall be given," might call forth the image of your hands already receiving what you have prayed for, accompanied by a deep sense of gratitude and completeness. These scriptural triggers act as behind-the-scenes reinforcements, strengthening your inner state without the need for constant conscious effort. The hidden truth is that the mind thrives on symbols and emotional anchors. By linking your answer picture to a phrase charged with spiritual power, you give it both depth and resilience. Even when the outer world challenges your faith, That trigger can bring you back instantly to the feeling of the fulfilled vision, ensuring you don't unconsciously replace it with an image of lack or delay. Over time, this practice rewires your inner landscape so thoroughly that your old patterns no longer feel natural. You find yourself thinking, speaking, and acting from the reality you've been envisioning, long before it arrives in tangible form. And that's when the shift becomes self-sustaining, because you are no longer waiting for the change, you are living it. Now I want to go even deeper into how these spiritual triggers can be combined with sensory detail to create a living, breathing vision so compelling that it draws its fulfillment toward you with almost magnetic certainty. Write in the comments, "I transform from within." Creative imagination thrives in an atmosphere of independence. To sustain a vision that is truly yours, you must trust your own inner insight more than the shifting tides of public opinion or the fragile currency of approval. The world is quick to offer its commentary. Some will doubt, others will advise you to be realistic, and many will project their own limitations onto your dreams. If you allow those voices to override your inner knowing, the clarity of your vision begins to fade, and with it, the power to bring it into form. The hidden truth is that great transformations are rarely understood by the crowd at the beginning. They only make sense in hindsight, once the results are visible. Guarding your imagination in this way requires courage, not the loud kind that demands recognition, but the quiet, steady courage that says, "I know what I see, and I will keep seeing it until it becomes real." This independence is not about isolation. It's about maintaining the integrity of your vision so it can grow without being reshaped by every passing opinion. One powerful example of this comes from a man who had lost mobility in his leg. Medical treatments had reached their limit, and while the physical diagnosis seemed fixed, he chose to explore the untapped potential of his mind. Every day, with disciplined focus, he would close his eyes and imagine himself walking up a steep hill. He didn't just picture the scene. He felt the weight of his body shifting, the muscles in his leg responding, the sun on his skin, the pull of gravity, and the satisfaction of reaching the top. At first, the mental image felt like a distant fantasy, but over time, it became so vivid that his body began to respond. Small twitches became controlled movements, and eventually, steps followed. The day came when he actually walked that hill, and it was almost identical to the vision he had rehearsed countless times. This was not a miracle in the sense of breaking natural law. It was a demonstration of it. His imagination had imprinted such a clear and emotionally charged command onto his subconscious that his body found ways to obey, rewiring itself to match the image held in mind. The physical healing was simply the outer form of an inner transformation that had already taken place. What makes this story so compelling is that his vision would have been impossible to maintain if he had sought constant validation from others. Many would have told him it was pointless, that the facts were fixed, but he understood something essential. The facts are not the end of the story. They are the current expression of an older pattern. Change the pattern, and the facts must eventually change too. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this kind of unwavering inner focus can override even the most entrenched limitations, creating results that others might call impossible, but you will know were inevitable all along. Write in the comments, "I trust my vision." When Jesus spoke in parables, he wasn't simply telling stories to pass the time or make his teachings entertaining. Each parable was a carefully crafted mental picture, a seed designed to take root in the mind and grow into a living truth. These images bypass the intellect's defenses and speak directly to the heart, where transformation truly begins. A vineyard, a mustard seed, a lost coin. These weren't just metaphors. They were keys that unlocked understanding, allowing deep spiritual laws to embed themselves in the imagination of the listener. And once those inner pictures were planted, they had the power to reshape lives from the inside out. This is the same principle that applies when you create your own mental imagery. The most vivid and transformative visions aren't cold, logical diagrams. They are rich, sensory scenes infused with meaning. They speak to you in a way that bypasses the analytical mind and connects directly to the subconscious, which is the engine room of creation. But here's the hidden truth. The image alone is not enough. For it to be sealed into the subconscious, it must be accompanied by genuine feeling. Words spoken without emotion are like seeds, scattered on stone. They may land, but they do not grow. Feeling is what softens the soil, draws the image down, and anchors it deep enough to become a living influence in your life. It's why affirmations repeated mechanically often fail to produce change. They lack the emotional charge that signals to the subconscious, this is important, this is real. The impact of combining imagery with feeling is profound, because it doesn't just communicate the idea, it impresses it as fact. Think of the difference between saying, "I am at peace," and actually feeling the calm, slow rhythm of your breath, the ease in your muscles, the stillness in your mind as you imagine a moment of complete serenity. The latter is not just a statement, it is an experience, and the subconscious responds to experience as reality. This is the hidden mechanism behind all true creation. You don't just think it, you live it inwardly until it must, by law, express outwardly. This is why the parables were so enduring. People remembered them not just because of the words, but because those words had evoked pictures, and those pictures had stirred emotions. The story of the prodigal son, for example, is not just about forgiveness. It is about the feeling of coming home, the relief, the embrace, the restoration. That emotion cements the truth far more powerfully than a mere commandment could. And when you create your own visions, the same principle applies. The more vividly you can see it, and the more intensely you can feel it, the more firmly it becomes part of your inner reality. From there, it's only a matter of time before the outer world conforms. Now, I want to go even deeper into how to deliberately fuse feeling and imagery in such a way that your subconscious not only accepts it instantly, but begins working relentlessly to make it a living reality. Write in the comments, "I feel it as real." Gratitude is one of the most powerful creative emotions because it carries within it the assumption that what you desire is already yours. When you feel genuine thankfulness for something you have yet to see with your physical eyes, you are telling your subconscious, and the very fabric of reality, that it already exists in the unseen. This shift in perspective is transformative. Gratitude does not beg or plead. It affirms and aligns. It moves you out of the mindset of waiting and into the state of being, which is the exact place from which creation flows. What makes gratitude so potent is that it bypasses resistance. When you say, "I will be grateful when it happens," you push the fulfillment into the future, keeping it always just out of reach. But when you say, "I am grateful now," you collapse that distance. You bridge the gap between desire and manifestation by emotionally living as if the journey is complete. The impact is profound. Your thoughts, energy, and even your physical demeanor begin to shift toward the frequency of the reality you've claimed. However, there is a step that many overlook. After building the image, feeling it fully, and wrapping it in gratitude, you must release it. This is where trust enters the process. Releasing the image doesn't mean abandoning it. It means letting go of the restless need to check whether it's working. That constant mental checking is like digging up a planted seed every day to see if it's sprouting. It interrupts the natural growth process. Trust says, "I have impressed this on my mind and spirit. Now I let the unseen forces arrange the details." This is one of the hidden truths behind manifestation. Your role is to create the inner reality and hold the emotional alignment, not to micromanage the how or when of its arrival. The unseen intelligence that governs creation operates with a precision and timing that often surpasses anything the logical mind could orchestrate. When you interfere with impatience, you risk delaying what is already on its way. But when you release it in trust, you allow those behind-the-scenes arrangements to happen swiftly and harmoniously. The journey becomes lighter when you adopt this posture. You are no longer straining toward your desire, but walking in the quiet confidence that it is already yours. This confidence not only speeds manifestation, but also keeps you aligned with the qualities you want to embody: peace, assurance, joy, and in that state, you are far more likely to recognize and act upon the opportunities that lead directly to your vision's fulfillment. The balance is delicate yet powerful. Deep emotional engagement when forming the image, complete gratitude for its reality, and full release into trust. Once that cycle is complete, your only task is to live in a way that matches the reality you've created within. From there, the outer world has no choice but to follow. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this art of release can open the door for outcomes that arrive in ways so perfect, you'll realize you could never have planned them yourself. Write in the comments, I release it in trust. Releasing in trust doesn't mean you ignore the obstacles that try to creep into your mind. It means you meet them with a deliberate and powerful response. One of the greatest hidden drains on your creative energy is the quiet persistence of negative emotional images. These clay idols of fear, guilt, resentment, or self-doubt stand in the sacred space of your imagination, like statues you never meant to build, yet somehow keep worshipping with your attention. Every time you replay a painful memory, dwell on a fear, or anticipate failure, you are feeding these false images and allowing them to occupy the space meant for your highest vision. The truth is, the mind does not leave a vacuum. If you remove one image, another will take its place, and if you do not choose it consciously, it will be chosen for you, often by old habits or external influences. This is why the practice of substitution is so essential. The moment a destructive image arises, you must immediately replace it with a constructive one. Even if at first it feels forced, you are not pretending the negative thought never came. You are refusing to let it root. Think of it like training a wild vine to grow along a trellis. Left unattended, it will wrap itself around anything in reach, fences, poles, or even weeds. But with consistent redirection, it begins to follow the shape you've chosen, and over time, that structure becomes its natural path. Each time fear appears, you counter it with the mental picture of the outcome you desire. When guilt whispers, you see yourself already forgiven and free. When resentment surfaces, you replace it with the image of peace and release. This is not a one-time event but an active discipline. At first it may feel like a constant effort, because the old images have momentum, but the impact of persistence is extraordinary. Gradually, the negative visions lose their emotional charge, and the constructive images begin to dominate your inner world. Your mind becomes less reactive and more deliberate, and you start to notice that your external experiences reflect this shift. The hidden truth is that your creative energy is always flowing somewhere. If it is tied up in maintaining old, harmful images, there is less available to bring your true vision into form. By replacing the negative with the positive, again and again without hesitation, you are freeing that energy and directing it toward the life you actually want to live. Behind the scenes, this process is doing more than just reshaping your thoughts. It is rewiring the emotional associations that drive your decisions and behaviors. You find yourself responding differently, making choices that align with your vision almost automatically, because the inner picture guiding you has changed. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this discipline of substitution can evolve into a state where the positive image becomes so dominant that the negative simply cannot survive in your consciousness. Write in the comments, I choose the higher image. Forgiveness is not always an easy decision, especially when the wound feels deep and personal, but it becomes far more attainable when approached through the power of visualization. Instead of wrestling endlessly with the emotions in your mind, you begin to create a mental scene of reconciliation, not necessarily involving direct conversation with the person, but a moment where the heaviness is lifted. You might picture yourself standing in the same space as them, not with tension in your body, but with a sense of release. You see their face softened, you feel the weight in your chest dissolve, and you walk away from that scene lighter, freer. This isn't about excusing their actions, it's about reclaiming your own energy from the grip of resentment. Resentment, if left unchecked, acts like a constant drain on your creative power. The mind replays the memory over and over, each time reinforcing the pain as if it were still happening in the present. But by deliberately crafting an image of peace, you begin to overwrite the destructive loop with one that fosters emotional freedom. The impact of this is profound. The energy once consumed by bitterness becomes available again for healing, for vision, for the life you are building now. The same principle applies to physical well-being. Perfect health begins as a clear, unwavering image in the mind. The body responds to the mind's dominant impressions, whether they are images of weakness and decline or ones of strength and vitality. If you repeatedly see yourself in pain, struggling, or limited, your body will follow that script. But when you consistently hold a vision of yourself moving freely, breathing easily, and radiating vitality, you are feeding your cells a new instruction. This is not blind denial of current symptoms. It's a recognition that the body's form is an expression of the mind's pattern, and patterns can be changed. You begin to inhabit that inner image of health as though it were already true. You feel the warmth in your limbs, the steadiness of your breath, the ease in every movement. Over time, that mental reality becomes so familiar that it feels more real than the symptoms themselves, and the body begins to shift in response. The hidden truth is that healing, whether emotional or physical, is not a mysterious exception to the laws of creation. It is their direct application. Forgiveness frees the mind from the burden of destructive memories, making space for new, life-giving images. Vision of perfect health provides the blueprint for the body to follow, guiding it back into harmony. Together they reveal that transformation is not about waiting for change to happen. It's about actively shaping the unseen until the seen must conform. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this mastery of inner imagery can create a unified state where peace of mind and physical vitality reinforce each other, producing results that feel nothing short of miraculous. Write in the comments, "I see myself whole." If you stayed with me all the way here, then you already know how powerful it can be to work with your inner images, your emotions, and your faith in such a deliberate way. This is the kind of conversation we have often, and if you want to keep deepening this journey together, subscribing will make sure you're always here when we open up these spaces. I'd love to know who's made it to the very end, so drop in the comments. I'm with you until the end. It's always inspiring to see how many of us are walking this path together. And if what we've shared resonated with you, a simple like is a great way to keep this connection flowing. There's a video right here that complements this topic beautifully. Click and continue with me over there.